Robert, thank you very much for joining us on this episode of the Defence Series today. Quite an exciting one for us, actually. So, first time that we'll be getting a European perspective on things within defence as well. So, thank you for joining us. For those, obviously, that don't know much about yourself and FiberCoat, it'd be great to find out a bit more.
Thank you, Harry. Thanks for having me. Yes, so I can give a short introduction about ourselves. So I'm Robert. I'm one of the founders and CEO at FiberCoat. And FiberCoat is, as the name suggests, the company that coats fibers. So we developed a product 5 years ago, actually 10 years ago at the university, where we are able to coat glass, basalt, and other fibers with metals and plastics. Our number one product that we have is an aluminum coated glass fiber, which is very conductive, it's very strong, it's fully recyclable and very cheap compared to the competitors in the market. And that is used a lot for shielding. So we can think about shielding of EVs or other types of structures, as well as heating and as countermeasures like chaff for airplanes and ships, which is our main market right now. So we produce around 10 to 15 tons a month, supplying NATO and other forces. And we're also working on new projects to protect from EMP strikes and basically trying to keep infrastructure and people safe.
Amazing, and definitely, some of those latter bits, ever more prevalent at the moment, within the news and those kind of emerging technology areas. Something that we've spoken about with UK SMEs before is how has that journey been? Like, what does that growth journey look like for someone coming in as an SME, into defence? How have you found that from a European perspective and selling into those communities?
So we are based in Germany, and especially Germany is a country where defense was never a big focus for many years. I would say until the war in Ukraine broke out, it was I say one of those taboo topics to discuss in business and to have in our business plan. But with that shift of the war breaking out and the general public opinion changing, we have been approached by many more defense companies, and our investors also opened up. So from our point of view, we never targeted defense, but then the need very quickly arose because development, innovation, as well as investment into defense on the European side was very low and had to suddenly appear, more or less. And then this goes hand in hand with the US being more unreliable due to the political situation there, China being also kind of not a preferred partner anymore. So we really benefited from this shift on a global scale. And I think this accelerated our whole development. That said, the selling to defense is still a very, from my point of view, weird thing, because they think differently, they act differently. There's always a connection between government contracts, defense companies, and then us as a supplier, because we supply materials. So it's much more complicated to navigate than a pretty straightforward material deal that we have in our construction automotive sectors. I mean, they also take time, but it's much more straightforward in the sense of planability of the contract as in defense.
And obviously, as an emerging company, and you mentioned earlier, it was something that had come out of a university project. Did you say, like, as a growing and scaling company, what would you say was the sort of the most challenging thing that you experienced from moving from that commercial, sales and what that looked like to almost reconfiguring how it is that you, well, operationally or you tend for defense projects?
Yes, on the one hand, we're lucky because a materials startup or materials company, we make materials. So it's our fibers are just like cotton. You can use it to make a scarf or uniform from the same material. So it's the same with our fibers from an operational standpoint. Yes, we have to adapt it a bit to fit the spec of the defense industry, but at the same time, our process or the product doesn't really change that much. What does change is the level of scrutiny we have to put into the process, the protection that we have to put onto the material, the logistics that go with it, and then navigating the whole, how do you say that? So the whole governance situation. So basically, am I allowed to ship this material two partners in Europe, two partners outside of Europe. Who can I send this to? Who can't I send this to? I need to get approval from the German state or other states, depending on where this goes. So this was a big shift for us. And then also understanding that we put it differently. In the automotive industry, we see that innovation is looked at and then they're going to test it, qualify it, and use it in the car. In defense, they were very clear you have to fit exactly this one spec, you have to supply this spec, and then we can talk about changing the spec down the road and bring innovation in. So we had to adapt to what they need right now first, in order to get the foot in the door, and then we can discuss with the government, with the defense companies, to work on something new. And this is for us a very different shift, because so far we've usually sold through the R&D channels or through the innovation channels of our customers, while we now have to target directly the procurement offices and get from there the innovation side of things. So this kind of a really changed how we approach things. So what we did basically here is we split our teams. We have a sales and business development team that focus on defense, with knowledge and insights into how this market works, and the civil team, where we partner up with other companies, is focusing on the traditional way of doing sales. So we really had to rebuild that team internally.
Yeah, and I think you quite often see that with businesses that are, as you say, kind of coming up with those core ideas and perhaps that new market segmentation. I would say a lot of the conversations that I've had previously have been very software defined based, or maybe more so looking into DevOps architecture, infrastructure within the area, and certainly for that sort of aspect of special materials and what challenges that's faced. It'd be really interesting to get that perspective as well, where we often get a software side, that's coming through from supply chain, deployment, different quality assessment areas on that materials field.
Yeah, I think one of the big differences is that we cannot scale as quickly as software could. So if one of our customers buys 2 tons today and then 10 tons next month, we would have to be already prepared for that 10-ton order 6 months ago. So we need to be ready to supply those amounts. And we're still in a phase where the demand is really fluctuating. So we get a big project, we can supply 100 tons, 120 tons, and then there's maybe 3 or 4 months no order at all. And not knowing the exact spec, we would have to wind down our machinery again. So it's kind of, we are much more dependent on these other things from a pure scaling and setup perspective. So this is why we build our own machines that are really, I can turn them on and off very quickly. It's just the people that are I cannot fire quickly and I don't want to. But this is a really, I think, a different aspect that we have to navigate, and we really have to push our customers to give us long-term contracts that we can really plan years in ahead, because this allows us to really scale and also get the funding from the investors or banks to get there. And on the other hand, is that we are highly dependent on what happens around us. So for example, when the war broke out, we already had a production site in Germany. They were producing around 2 tons a month, so it was rather small, but we had customers and supplying them. And then in Germany, the gas prices soared, as you might recall. I guess it happened all across the globe, all across Europe. So with the energy spike, we had to move out of Germany because we couldn't afford the gas prices anymore. We couldn't pay that anymore. With our partner, he stopped all of his facilities. So we moved to Georgia, the nation, not the state, in order to be able to supply. So we took 2 months to move all of our production over there. And now, because Georgia is again in a kind of a tricky spot with the elections that happened end of last year, we have to look into, if things go sour, how do we move this back to Germany or to any other site? So this is why we build up new sites in Germany too. So this is a really different way of, not different, but it's kind of we have to be much more resilient or much more adaptable to geopolitical events, since right now the world is more chaotic than it used to be 5 years ago. This has a big impact on our business and how we build strategy and how we prepare for any eventualities, as compared to software, for example.
Of course, yeah, and it definitely seems important. Obviously, the consideration of well, stock. You're holding a stock count. Are you? You're producing. You know where that is, and certainly from a geopolitical
Yeah.
perspective, one eye on the prize and one eye understanding what might be changing around you.
Maybe to add one more there, logistics is also a big topic. So before the war broke out, it was very easy to ship materials to certain partners because Russia was not in the way. But then with the crisis in the Middle East and with the crisis in Russia, Georgia, shipping from Georgia by sea or land has become much more complicated. So again, we have to take this into account and find new shipping routes that are safe but fast and as cheap as possible. So these are very unique challenges that we have to deal with.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed. Not too much change for this year for yourselves. And obviously, we've been part of the journey for well, I think pretty much since inception. Supporting.
Yes.
What does 2025, what does 2026, look like for you? What's that ambition point? What's exciting that's coming up?
We just closed a pretty big fundraising round from our perspective. So it was a $30 million raise in October that we're now using to expand our operations and to also expand globally. So if you look into 2025 and 2026, we are building up a production site in Germany where we'll also target a 15 to 20 ton a month operation, which needs to be staffed with workers, blue collar workers, but also and operators, but also engineers to support them and maintenance crew. So this is a big shift both for the company because now we're going to run our own plant, not rent anything out, but it's going to be our own systems. And also culturally speaking, we've been much more. We've been a very white collar company. Now bringing in a different type of operators and people. So our culture needs to be resilient and ready for this shift. So this is what we've been preparing for in the past couple of months. And then towards the end of the year, we're looking to expand outside of Europe. So we have currently sites that we look into in the US, in India, and in Japan. We still have to decide which one's going to be the first because it really depends on the local orders and the local customer how much they're gonna procure from us. But this is again a big step where then we need to hire locally, find local support because we learned in Georgia we've been working with Germans, and I wouldn't say they failed big time, but they struggled a lot. And since your colleague Jason found Nicholas, one of our local employees, he was Georgian, he speaks great English and has good management skills. The operations in Georgia just improved big time. So the whole process became much smoother. And the production got much better. So this is the same approach we're going to have in other states too. We want to hire local people who understand the culture, speak the language, and can link to us to run our operations locally. So I think these are the two big steps over the next 2 years. And then in parallel, we're looking into new markets. So expanding into space, we're expanding into more civilian applications. And for those, we develop new coatings. So we work on not just aluminum, but to coat with nickel, tin, gold, silver. So there we have new coatings on the pipeline where our R&D team needs to work on and potentially expand a bit.
It sounds like you're keeping yourself busy. Culture, people, geographies, and R&D in there. And as those plans come into fruition, here's a good chance, I guess, to sell the business as well. So if there are any potential new employees in Germany, in Georgia, in a potential new location where that might be,
Yeah.
if you could summarize in a line, why join us? Why FiberCoat? What would you say?
Ooh, one line.
Maybe a little bit more. I might have been a little bit tight with that.
So I would say the FiberCoat is really making the future affordable. So people joining us can work on the basic building blocks of our industry and society, where we offer new, sustainable, affordable, accessible building blocks that will be used in any application out there, and gonna improve how we live and work in the future. And if I turn it around in FiberCoat, we not just I'm going to say that everybody says, right? We have a wonderful team. It's very talented. But what we really offer is we treat our employees as adults. I think this is pretty much I'm not sure if it's a unique thing, but you get a lot of flexibility. You get a lot of trust from the company, and you can really excel as somebody who's responsible in their own work. So we have a very open, transparent, and supporting culture that enables us to grow as quickly as we do because people take the decisions on the spot, on the fly, and we're able to move fast.
And I think that's so important. The agility like element of that there, so important when coming into a growth and giving people that capability to work their own job. That would almost be a perfect point to finish, such a succinct description of why. But I think for the final question, and this might be for anyone that is watching this that is currently sat within a role and they've got a really great idea. Perhaps it's someone like yourselves that's come up with a theory at university. What one tip would you give to someone with a great idea that's and ahhing about whether setting up a startup, bringing that idea to life? What one tip would you give to someone watching it that might be in that position?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, try and do. If you fail, you're going to learn a lot. But the one tip that is probably not that's not in every book is don't be afraid of sharing your idea with potential customers. So just to get some traction and understanding if it's a good idea, if people need it, if there's a potential market or chance to make money with this, or whatever your target is, reaching out, asking questions, and learning if your idea is a good idea. You can't do it too soon, and people are too busy with their own stuff to copy you. So as long as you stay true to yourself and you push your idea and kind of try to find out if it's a good idea, you won't fail. You'll just adapt. So go out there and talk to potential customers and partners.
And I'm sure I won't get done for copyright infringement for this, but there's a famous sports brand with a tick on the shoe. Their logo, I think, just do it. It sounds like what you're saying. Just take the risk, run at it, and see where it goes.
Exactly. Exactly. But the key here is don't be afraid to talk to others. Don't stay in your bubble because they will always support you. Your mom will always say that you're great. So don't ask your mom. Ask someone where you're actually afraid of their opinion. Yeah.
I think that's good advice. Seek those that aren't always going to give you the answer that you want
Exactly.
from there, and that's where you can get that growth point. Well, look, it's been really good to hear the perspective, and thank you very much for jumping on with Robert. I think there's certainly some takeaways in there. Whether that's looking at the supply chain issues, the effect of geopolitics, what it is like scaling something, and perhaps you have scaled a commercial model that's moved into defense. And of course, 2025, 2026, people to keep an eye. There's growth coming, and it could be more international growth and opportunities to jump on board and join you for that. So, look, thank you very much for joining us, and look forward to speaking again soon.